I want to take a moment to introduce our special guest today. He is the 75th mayor of Detroit, and if I have anything to say about it, he'll be the 50th governor of Michigan. I've been working with and around elected officials for 27 years, and I had the opportunity through the Detroit Regional Chamber to interview a number of them as part of our PAC process. And when now Mayor Duggan came in to interview with our PAC, he said something that you've probably all heard him say multiple times too. Judge me by one thing, whether or not the population of the city of Detroit grows. Mission accomplished. And he did that through doing the same things any of us would do. He reduced crime with Project Greenlight, improving response times. He improved housing by getting rid of the blight in the city and rebuilding it with $1 billion of investment in new housing. He helped the city recover after a historic bankruptcy. Like I said, I've been doing this for 27 years. I don't know that I've ever seen a more impactful public servant in those times. So with that, I will introduce the 75th mayor of Detroit and the 50th governor of Michigan, Mike Duggan.
Okay. Thank you. All right. That's the first time I knew that Gretchen Whitmer was 49th. Right? Got something to shoot for now. So how's everybody today?
So, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We're delighted to have you. Hopefully, if we get our way, we eventually will also be doing a similar event with whoever you'll be facing in November, so we look forward to that as well. Before we talk about your future vision for the state of Michigan, I think we should maybe spend a minute or two just kind of looking back a little bit to where you came from and how you got to be at this place. So I'm sure everybody in the room knows that you just completed your term as mayor of Detroit, your third. I think probably a lot of the people this morning also know that before that you were the CEO of the DMC. But your public service goes beyond that. I believe you started as a Wayne County assistant prosecutor, and then you were an assistant county executive under the Ed McNamara administration. So tell us about how you went from Prosecutor Duggan to gubernatorial candidate governor.
Well, you know, I was a kid who grew up in Detroit, and the Detroit I grew up in was magical. Everybody could get a job at the plant. The neighborhoods were beautiful. The shopping districts were great. Downtown was spectacular. And in the course of my life, everything we knew was taken away from us. The auto plants moved out. The stores moved out. The banks moved out. The movie theaters moved out. The neighbors moved out. And it always just ate at me. And when I was applying for jobs when I was in law school in Ann Arbor, all of my classmates were applying in LA, Chicago, New York. I said, I'm only applying to Detroit. They're like, Detroit? Are you crazy? But I wanted to do something about the city. And when I came back downtown in the 1980s in a law firm, I was the only one my age on the streets, and I realized I was a little ahead of my time. But I did. I had spent time as the deputy county executive, oversaw the building of the McNamara Terminal, the modern airport that we have. I chaired the stadium authority that built Comerica Park and Ford Field, helped bring those teams back to the city. Got elected the county prosecutor, and I was happy being county prosecutor when the Detroit Medical Center was nearing bankruptcy. They lost $100 million a year for 5 years. They voted to close Receiving Hospital, close Hutzel Hospital, close the Carmanis Cancer Hospital. And I was aware of it because it was a crisis, but I wasn't focused on it until the board chair of the DMC called me one day and said, we want to hire you to run the hospital system. And I was pretty shocked at the call. I said, you don't want somebody from healthcare? And they said, yeah, we had a doctor. He's the guy that lost the $100 million a year for the 5 years. We actually think we need somebody to come from outside healthcare to change the way we do business. And so I quit in the middle of my term because I thought, Receiving Hospital treats 100,000 patients a year in the emergency room, most of them uninsured or on Medicaid. Where were these folks going to go? Hutzel delivers 5,000 babies a year, most of them high-risk pregnancies. Where were they going to go? So I took that job on the promise that they would stop all the hospital closings for 6 months and give me a chance to turn it around. And came in and I found a whole lot of good people, dedicated healthcare workers in a bad system. And said, let's stop whining about the federal government does this, the state government does this, Beaumont steals all the good paying patients. I don't want to hear about any of that stuff. It's 3 hours in our waiting room. We're going to fix that. We got people, did a 29-minute emergency room guarantee, fixed cardiology, fixed neurosurgery, grew the hospital from 11,000 to 14,000 people. We were the only ones not laying off in the Great Recession. But I'd go to the cafeteria at lunch, and the Detroit employees would sit down with me and say, Mike, you got to run for mayor. And I said, run for mayor? I live in Livonia, okay? I said, well, you can move. And there is no place in America that has a deeper history of racial division than Detroit and the suburbs, and everything in the city. Black versus white, city versus suburbs, Detroit versus Lansing. And I looked at this and I thought, I don't know if somebody who looks like me can win in an 83% African-American city, but I said I got to give it a try. And so I announced for mayor. Some of you probably thought it was a little far-fetched. A lot of people thought it was. But I campaigned in a way nobody saw before. I said to the people of the city, invite me to your house and I'll show up. And a lady would call and I'd drive myself and I'd sit in the living room and talk. And somebody would invite me to the next one, and the next one. And an interesting thing happens. When you sit in people's homes and break bread with them, everything that divides us fades to the background. And we talked about, I want my daughter to be able to ride her bike down the street again, but I won't let her go out in front because of the drug house. I'm afraid to go to sleep at night because the abandoned house next door to me has got squatters in it. I'm afraid it's going to catch fire and spread to my house. And as we talked about how we solve these things, I finished up every one at what turned out to be 250 house parties. And I said the same thing to the group every single time, that the problem with Detroit is not that the street lights aren't on or the parks are closed or the cops don't show up. The problem is us versus them politics. If you vote for me, you're voting for a different kind of city, where it's not going to matter if you're black or brown or white, not going to matter if you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim, not going to matter if you're gay or straight. If you're voting for me, you're voting for a city where everybody's welcome. And all the political people say, you can't say that, you'll get killed. But the damnedest thing happened. Votes came in and I carried 92% of the precincts in the city. The politicians were tearing each other up. But the average person, they want the same thing in the city they want in the suburbs. They want their kids to be safe in the neighborhoods, go to good schools, jobs, be able to stay in town, and be safe. And so you've seen what we've done over the last 12 years when you stopped tearing each other down and you started working together.
So I think by any measure, people would say you had a pretty successful run as mayor. You're entering a different environment now, and once again, doing something very unconventionally. Yeah. We've never really had a legitimate, serious third-party candidate running for governor, and I think it's going to have a profound impact on the election either way. So what led you to your decision to set aside your Democratic background and your Democratic support machine and try to go it on your own?
You know, I've always been successful dealing with Republicans and Democrats in Lansing, but in the last 5 or 6 years, the toxic environment is out of control. There is something about 56 House Democrats and 54 House Republicans, or 20 Senate Democrats and 18 Senate Republicans. Everybody in Lansing is obsessed with every bill. Does it help me keep the majority? Does it help me get the majority? Whether it actually helps people is a secondary concern. And when you only have two parties, they've figured out that the easiest way to win is not to explain your mental health policy, but to tell you how evil the other party is, because you only got two choices. And whoever's better at tearing the other person down wins the election, except where are we? 60% of the third graders in this state do not read at grade level. Not Detroit, 60% of 8-year-olds in Michigan. That's the state's own report. 44th in America. We're near the bottom of America in population for the last 30 years. And every 2 to 4 years, the Republicans and Democrats swing back and forth, and they change their strategies. And I look at this, and I say, this is crazy. We got no economic development plan in this state. 12 years ago, the economic development plan was called MEGA. We tried to keep the auto companies here in the Great Recession. Then Rick Snyder came in and said that was crazy. He stopped all the incentives. We're going to do economic gardening. Then after a couple of years, he realized he went too far. He adopted then what I supported and Grand Rapids supported, which was the Detroit strategy. We won't give you $250 million checks up front to do something. But if you're going to come build in our city, in an empty building or an empty lot, we'll discount the new taxes you're going to pay. You earn it. And so we got the state to pass transformational brownfield. It's building the riverfront in Grand Rapids. It's building the high-rise apartments in Lansing. It's building the Hudson's building in the city of Detroit. It was going great. Then Ford put a couple of battery plants in Kentucky and Tennessee. The state panicked, adopted SOAR, started passing out $250 million grants to people who were not building anything. It went so bad, the states now canceled SOAR, canceled the brownfields, canceled everything. Now, you know who's loving this? Jobs Ohio. The Indiana economic development folks. They're telling people every 2 years, Michigan changes its strategy. And they are in our city recruiting our companies to go to Columbus and Indianapolis every week. And I looked at this and said, if I run for governor as a Democrat, I'm walking into this same environment where all the Republicans will line up against me because I supported their opponents in the rep and Senate races. The left wing of the Democratic Party is no fans of mine, which means I'll get up there and I won't be able to get anything done. And even if I do, in 2 or 4 years, it'll just swing back the other way, and they'll undo it, and I'll just have wasted years of my life. And I looked at this and I said, if you look at what I did in Detroit, I was building change. Now, if we're going to say when Mike was there, it was great and it fell apart when he left, that'd be a total waste. You're seeing my successor, Mary Sheffield, build on what I did. Unity, no us versus them. Let's take the progress we made and take it further. I said, how do you ever get a Michigan strategy that carries on? The only way you do it is you've got to get Republicans and Democrats to buy into solutions together. You know how you teach third graders to read? Mississippi went from 49th in America to 9th in third grade reading in 10 years. You teach the kids phonics. You put them in small class sizes in the early grades. You have tutors available, and you have a curriculum that doesn't change from year to year. None of that is Republican or Democrat. I'm saying, what if somebody came in and said, I'm not going to get involved in any of the state rep or state senate races. You want to elect a Republican Senate? Fine. You want to elect a Democratic House? Fine. I'm going to work with people of goodwill. And so that sounds crazy, but as you probably gathered, I'm obsessed with metrics. I didn't wake up one morning and decide there wasn't any basis for this. But if you look nationally, Gallup, since the 1980s, has asked Americans, do you consider yourself a Republican, a Democrat, or independent? This year, Democrat, 27%, all-time low. Republican, 27%, all-time low. Independent, 43%, all-time high. Now, which of you as business folks would invest in the 27% declining market, right? The answer was sitting right there, but nobody's seen an independent. And so I didn't know what was going to happen when I started out, but what I knew for sure was this. If I go to Lansing, I don't have any interest in going up there and not accomplishing anything. If I don't feel like I could change the direction of this state, I don't want to be there. And so when I started out, felt like the same thing. Early polling, I was at 15%. People said, independent doesn't have a chance. Then last summer, I got to 21%. And they said, that's a little high for an independent. Then last fall, I was at 26%. And the Democrats in particular started to panic. And if you saw the last poll last month, I'm 30, John James is 29, Jocelyn Benson's at 28. I'm thinking, my plan was pull this thing even in September and win in October. I never dreamed of a scenario that I would pull even in February. But I go to the farms in rural areas, they feel forgotten and ignored. I go to the small towns on the lakes, they feel forgotten and ignored. I go up to the Upper Peninsula, they feel forgotten and ignored. The people in this state feel like they know things are slipping slowly the right direction. They don't feel like Lansing is dealing with it. And when I come in and say, here's a different approach, it's been pretty remarkable. And so this is what I'm doing. I'm sitting where anybody who invites me, and appreciate you having me here this morning.
So let's talk about that a little bit. For the first time, it's entirely likely that the person who elected governor is going to be elected with less than a majority vote, because getting to 50 is going to be difficult with 3 legitimate candidates. And let's say you are elected governor. you're going to walk into the state chambers for the first time, and you're going to be looking out at the state representatives and the state senators knowing probably, well, they would never admit it, but none of them voted for you.
Well, I wouldn't assume that at all.
Well,
I have a whole lot of legislators calling me who are miserable in Lansing right now.
But they're not going to admit it publicly. So
We'll
in
see.
that kind of environment, though, how do you build a coalition to get some of your vision off the vision board and onto an action plan for the state of Michigan?
So think about this. Of course, I haven't accepted the fact that I won't be above 50%. You see this momentum, it's pretty remarkable. But let's just assume I win 40, 30, 30, which has been the game plan from the beginning. But think about this. Anybody running for Congress this year as a Republican or Democrat, the only swing votes in the state are voting Doug and independent for governor. Every state rep and state Senate candidate in a swing seat, the people deciding those races are the people voting independent for governor. They're the only votes that are in play. And I'm already getting calls from all of these folks saying, my pollster's telling me I got to get the Duggan voters in the fall in order to win. You're going to see a dynamic here. Right now, people are thinking about this in the only mindset you know that there's only two choices. Let me tell you, the first thing is preservation. And what you're going to see, if this state, Michigan, the purple state, sends a message to Lansing saying, if the two parties don't behave differently, we got third choices, it's going to be a shockwave, not just here, but across the country. And I can tell you this, you see how many Congress people are quitting right now? They can't get anything done. You see how many legislators are quitting this year? They can't get anything done. The number of legislators calling me saying, I didn't run for office in the first time just to beat the hell out of the other party and go to gridlock all the time. I have things I want to do. These people ran for office. You know some of them. People don't run for office the first time because they hate somebody. Something happened with a family member on mental health. Something happened in their schools. Something happened in their neighborhood. They started out wanting to do something. And they got to Lansing. And whatever they had in their heart they wanted to do, they were told, if you're not in the majority, it doesn't matter. So we're going to take up these priorities, and once we're in the majority, then we'll get to yours. And they make them all fall into line. And then they get the majority. It's 56-54. Can I take up my bill? Oh, no. If we take up we got to focus on the ones that help us keep the majority. And they end up going up there with the best of intentions and being put in a system where all of the funding goes to the House and Senate Democratic caucuses to beat the hell out of each other. And so there are a whole lot of legislators who actually have aspirations in their heart to do good things. I do believe there's people of goodwill in both parties. And I got to tell you this, if you don't elect the independent this time, and you send the Republicans and Democrats up there by themselves again, 10 years from now, this state's not going to be in a different shape. It's going to be the same thing all over again.
So deciding to run as an independent, did it cause you to lose some friends?
So I start with my son Ed is my campaign manager. In 2020, he was Michigan campaign manager for Biden. In 2024, he was Michigan campaign manager for Kamala Harris. Didn't tell him what I was thinking about doing until after the election was over. He'd have been horrified. But I said to him, Ed, look, I appreciate what you've just done, but I'm running as an independent. Now, a whole lot of people couldn't sign up fast enough saying, thank God. We're so fed up with politics as usual. He's like, Dad, you'll never get above 15%. But he's going to be a good son and sign up to run the campaign. After my first trip up on the farms outside of Frankenmuth, I'm on these bean farms, and no, I don't try to pretend somebody I'm not. I'm a kid who was born in Detroit, lived in the suburbs. I've not been on the farms. These farmers are so pissed off. I can't sell my beans because the Chinese won't buy them off the tariffs. My fertilizer costs have gone up because of the Canadian tariffs. Nobody in the state is doing anything about the damn roads up in the rural areas. We've been forgotten. And I'm just sitting 25 farmers in a room just talking about what we do. What does the mayor of Detroit know about us being ignored and forgotten? I said, let me see what I know about representing people feeling ignored and forgotten. Let me take you down to Detroit and introduce you to a mom of 3 kids, living on a block with no streetlights, 4 abandoned houses, overgrown parks, and the police and fire don't come. But we didn't whine about being ignored and forgotten. We went to work. Let's talk about your issues. And you should see it. They all relax. And these farmers are thinking, maybe we got more in common with Detroit than we would have imagined. By the end of an hour and a half, the patriarch of the family, 4-generation farm, patriarch of the family stands up in this massive building, calling it a barn is an understatement, and he says, 2 years ago, we had the biggest rally in Michigan for Donald Trump for president right here. They all go, yeah. And my wife and I look at each other like, okay, maybe we need to be going. He says, and after this, next year we're having a rally right here for Mike Duggan for governor. And they all go, yeah. And my son says, oh my God, we're going to win. Because there is something going on here in this state that people are fed up with the two parties. And it's just a matter of me getting out and getting known. And it's really an enjoyable process to meet folks from every corner of the state.
So I know that education is high on your list of priorities.
Sure is.
You mentioned it in your opening remark. I know that when you were mayor of Detroit, while you didn't have a lot of direct influence over the schools because they have their own superintendent, they have a board, you tried to be supportive, but I think it'd be fair to say that you maybe were hopeful that there could have been more influence than you were able to do. That's not true with the governor. The governor has an enormous amount of power over the public education system. So my question to you is, looking at the current state of our public education, and I think everybody would agree that it's not great, it's probably not even good. What specifically as governor do you think you can do to turn that system around?
So Brad mentioned in the introduction, we grew 7,000 people in population in Detroit. We led the state of Michigan in population growth, something you probably never thought you'd see in your lifetime. You know what we didn't grow on? Parents with school-age children. They're not moving into the city. And it's because of the school system. But you look across the state, 25 years ago, we were 19th in this country in third grade reading. Today, we're 44th. We have been going downhill 25 years, Republican and Democratic administrations. And I'm looking at this saying, I can't do anything about this as mayor. But it's not just Detroit. It is across this state. And you say, how did we get here? Now, you start with this. We passed Proposal A in 1994 and raised the sales tax in the state from 4 cents to 6 cents and promised that extra 2 cents would go to schools. And then they hit the Great Recession and they started taking money out of the school aid fund to plug the hole in the rest of the budget. It took $300 million. Then they took $600 million. Last year, the state of Michigan took $1.3 billion out of that sales tax supposed to go to K-12 and put into all their other little projects in the budget. At the same time, our reading scores are dropping. And I'm saying, this is crazy what is happening. But then you look at what's going on in schools, and it isn't just the money. 12 years ago in this state, state law said every school in the state was graded A, B, C, D, F. Then the Democrats got control, and they said A, B, C, D, F is mean. And they passed a new law. Every school in this state was now rated green, yellow, red. Okay, this is true. Then Rick Snyder said, green, yellow, red is too fuzzy. And he passed a new law. And it says every school in this state is going to be ranked from top to bottom based on test scores. And then the bottom ones started to fail with the public embarrassment. He said, oh, God, I made a mistake. 2021, the Republicans are back in charge and pass a law. All the schools are going to be graded A, B, C, D, F. 2023, the Democrats get the trifecta in their first order of business. They rescinded A, B, C, D, F. Now, you are a principal or a teacher trying to teach in the schools every year. And every 2 years, when they're changing the gradings, they're changing the curriculum. They're changing the textbooks. You can't even evaluate going back. And you say, as long as we have a state that goes back every 2 to 4 years, Republican and Democrat, we're going to do this. And I'm saying, guys, there's nothing about this that should be Republican or Democrat. Let's have the educators set up a curriculum. But when they took the $1.3 billion out, you know what got gutted? Vocational training, CTE programs. Okay? We can't fill all the construction worker jobs in the city of Detroit. Any of you guys know auto dealers, they want to pay $100,000 a year to auto mechanics and they can't fill the jobs. And here's what we've done. 40% of the school districts in this state have basically no CTE program at all. We spend $40 million a year in high school CTE. Indiana spends $200 million a year. And you're saying, we have to say as a school system when you're 14 years old, college is not for everybody. College is a good choice, but there's lots of other good choices. I want to have every school district in the state with quality CTE programs. When you go in as a freshman, you're introduced to your college curriculum, you're introduced to healthcare tracks, you're introduced to culinary tracks, you're introduced to construction tracks, you're introduced to auto mechanic tracks, and you can see what these things are like. But in Michigan, we're not doing that. Tell me what about that is Republican or Democrat? But yet, the Republicans and Democrats keep fighting with each other, and none of this is getting done. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to end up on the destination we're headed for, and that's 50th.
So you mentioned reversing the population loss in the city of Detroit. What single bold policy change do you think Michigan needs to reverse the population loss in Michigan and to become a top growth state?
So these young people, we didn't have the huge number of young people and go in by accident. Okay, I sat down, and it took 10 years, but it sat down and had a strategy. And I spent lots of time with young people. What do they want? They need affordable housing. They'd like to live near other young people. They want amenities. You saw what we've done with the riverfront. We completely rebuilt it to create a central gathering place where even if the kids are in the suburbs, they're downtown now on the weekends. And I brought the jobs of the future. We did well with manufacturing, but we also brought Google and Microsoft and LinkedIn and lots of those kinds of jobs of the future. You have to do three things: the jobs of the future, the affordable housing, and the kind of amenities. Now, we're growing basically in this state in two places, Detroit and Grand Rapids, where they've created those things. But I go around the state, number one, we are failing at attracting the tech jobs of the future. Right now, Columbus, Ohio, and Indianapolis, Indiana are beating us on recruiting those types of tech companies. We're going to wake up in 10 years and you think you're losing our young people now? We're going to be in worse shape. And we have no economic development strategy in this state to fight it. If you've got one, if you've seen one, tell me. Second, I don't care where you go in the state, the affordable housing issue has gotten out of hand. Young people cannot afford houses in Grand Rapids, in Petoskey, in Traverse City, and in Marquette. And so now, if you don't want to live in mom and dad's basement, you're moving to other parts of the country. You have to attack both of those things together. We got to bring the jobs of the future here, and we've got to make housing affordable here, or our kids are not going to stay. I've been spending lots of time in Silicon Valley the last 2 years, sitting with the CEOs of tech company you would all recognize to say, what would it take for you to bring your next tech company that's not going to be in Austin, Texas, or Miami? What would it take to bring it to Michigan? And it's kind of scary. Michigan is not on their radar at all. You look at the job losses that are coming in AI, there are places that are going to get lots of job gains in AI. But when I talk to these tech companies, they say to me, our capital is going to AI in ways, volumes you can't imagine. And what we look at is this, that AI consumes huge amount of data. And there's no place there's more data center chaos in the state of Michigan. Data centers consume a huge amount of energy. And all we know about Michigan is every time you guys have a storm, you got blackouts. And so Michigan is not on the radar. If we do not change the direction we're on, we're going to find out we have all the downside of AI in Michigan and none of the upside of the jobs of the future. And you need a governor who comes in. But if you guys sat down with me 12 years ago, did you ever think the city of Detroit would look the way it does today? We've got $10 billion in investment going on in the city right now. It's because we had a clear plan. I went out and I competed against other communities. I brought the jobs in. I brought the young kids in. And we need to have that same focus in the state of Michigan.
From your perspective, what are the top barriers preventing small businesses from starting or scaling in Michigan? And what would you do and change that as governor?
You know, I wish we'd have a conversation, because normally when I do these, I'm actually hearing from you, because most of you in this room can.
Well, you're hearing from them. It's just in writing.
Yeah, but we have to start with regulations, which are insane. And I'll just give you one example of what I did. City of Detroit, I had the restaurant owners tell me it's harder to open a restaurant in Detroit than any place else. It takes 6 months longer, it's more expensive. And every couple of years, we had a 150-page set of codes on what you have to do to be licensed to open a restaurant in Michigan. And every 2 years, I take the 3 or 4 stupidest rules, and I would cancel them. And the restaurant would be a little bit happier, but then they come back and say, you're still the worst. Finally, about 2 years ago, I brought in a guy from J.P. Morgan Chase who knew nothing about government, was their head of commercial banking, actually. And I hired him. I said, I want to have the easiest place in Michigan to start a restaurant. And I don't want you to talk to anybody inside government, okay? Because all we want to do is change our system. Go talk to the restaurant owners and see what other cities are doing. He comes back 60 days later, and he says, you're not going to like my answer. And I said, what's that? He says, you realize this state has a building code? I said, sure. He says, you realize this state has a fire code? I said, sure. He says, do you realize this state has a health code for restaurants? I said, sure. He says, explain to me why, if a new business passes the state building code, the fire code, and the health code, they should have to go through a 150-page city permit. He says, I think you ought to scrap the whole 150 pages. And I thought, you almost need this perspective, right? So I bring in Detroit City Council. Now, these rules have been written by people of good intention over the years, and I say to city council members, I want to scrap the whole thing. I got a 9-0 vote out of Detroit City Council. Scrap the entire city licensing process. And now we've got excitement going. But you have to attack your assumptions. Because the rules, if you guys have had the misfortune of dealing with Eagle, you know what I'm talking about. If you can figure out the rules from one month to the next, you're doing better than I am. And it doesn't matter whether you're a developer in an urban area or you're a farmer. The unpredictability of state regulations are choking this economy. I'm going to go at this hard with fair, predictable rules. I'm not saying I'm going to ease the rules. I'm going to make them fair and predictable for everybody so you don't have to go hire a special lawyer, a special lobbyist to get your problem solved. And when we start to do that, we now make it a lot easier to invest.
So you had mentioned AI and technology. Obviously, the development of data centers has become a real hot topic in the state of Michigan. Realizing we're a home rule state, does the state of Michigan, though, need some kind of statewide governance or policy or rules as it relates to developing these centers and making sure that they don't have a detrimental effect to the communities that are housing them?
So here's the thing. We need data centers in this state or the tech companies of the future will not be here. That's the truth. I say this. I go to the rural areas where they're opposing it, and I give you the same speech. But I said, here's the thing about data centers. I think the governor needs to step in right now and say there is a single state standard. You've got 18 different proposals on all kinds of different little rural townships and the like. You've got the lawyers from the biggest companies in America, Oracle and Microsoft and Google, with somebody's part-time township attorney trying to negotiate a $5 or $10 billion deal. And I'm saying the governor needs to step in now and say there are serious concerns. One is these data centers consume a huge amount of energy, and you're going to have to build new power generators. There has to be an airtight agreement that the existing customers do not bear any of the cost of that. These companies are well enough off. They will take all the risk on the new power. Let's have airtight agreements so the residents know my rates aren't going up. Second, the early data centers in this country, which are giant computers that are cooled, right? We're pulling water in from rivers and lakes, cooling the computers and sending it back out into the environment at warmer temperatures and doing environmental damage. We have to insist in Michigan that there be closed-loop refrigerated systems so that the water stays recycled. It's more expensive, but we are not going to jeopardize the water quality of Michigan. It's got to apply everywhere. And third, the local community has to support it. You can't override that, and that means I'm going to have first-class lawyers in the governor's office that when Microsoft or Google shows up in Lowell Township and the township board, which meets once a month, wants to know what to do, I'm going to send in lawyers who say, let us tell you what Saline did, let us tell you what Port Huron did, let us show you here, if you want it, let us show you how to craft airtight agreements. If you don't want it, let us help you block it. And now you level the playing field in the negotiations. If we do that, we now say to data center developers nationally, you want to come here? You know what the rules are. They're predictable. And we'll have the same lawyers sitting at the table, city after city, and there'll be plenty of cities. But I'm talking to some of these folks, and they're like, It's going to be noisy. I said, guys, there's been a data center for 10 years at the furniture headquarters in the Pyramid Building in Grand Rapids. There's no noise there. Go drive by and look. There's going to be a lot of traffic. I'm like, okay, guys, once they build the data centers, so you have people who just don't know. But when you talk about my electric rates are going to go up or you're going to damage the water, those are legitimate concerns. You can treat people with respect, give them information, and get communities to make the right decisions. When I'm the governor, there's going to be no question what the standards are if you want to do that. If we do that, we'll get data centers here where they're wanted, where they add value, and we'll create a state where we can now pitch to tech companies you can be secure. When you got your stage 1 business going to stage 2, Michigan's the place you want to be.
Thank you. So leaning back to your healthcare experience at the DMC, how should Michigan approach strengthening its healthcare infrastructure as part of its broader economic development and workforce strategy?
The amount of waste in the healthcare system is ridiculous. I ran a hospital system for 9 years. My first week on the job, they took me to the billing department. It is literally a football field full of people and computers. None of that money is going into healthcare. The amount of waste in the paperwork in the healthcare system. And if you are, anybody here runs a doctor's office, works in a hospital, the billing process for Blue Cross versus Total versus Priority versus HAP, et cetera, totally different systems, totally different portals. We are spending massive amounts of money on the payment side. And I now have, I think I've supported pretty much all the hospitals, all the health plans, and all the doctor groups. And I've already got a working group that's saying we're going to have a standardized portal that the different plans will charge different rates, but you shouldn't have to have entirely different systems. We're going to take costs out of the back end. And the other thing is this, most of the healthcare costs, they're not driven by somebody who got in a car accident today. They're driven by people with chronic diseases as people are aging. It's chronic kidney disease and heart disease and diabetes and the like. If you manage them well with doctors, you keep people out of the hospital, you drive down the cost of the system. I was in a hospital system that used to like having the same guy come back 3 times in 4 months. Okay? It's good for a hospital. It's bad for your medical bills. And I think I have pretty much everybody in the healthcare system bought in that we have to come together and treat people in a way, manage these chronic conditions. But you go to any hospital system today, 40 to 50% of the people in those beds are in there for chronic medical conditions. If you knock that down by 10 or 20%, you manage people's health better in their homes, you bring down costs. But the problem is, healthcare folks do not understand politics at all. Politicians don't begin to understand healthcare. You're going to have a governor who spent 9 years running a major hospital system. We're going to be the place in America that knows how to take the waste out of the system and put it back into taking care of you.
So it seems like recently elected politicians love to develop 100-day plans.
Yeah, right.
What's their administration going to look like in the first 100 days? What is Mike Duggan's first 100 days going to look like as Michigan governor?
So I got to tell you, I'm watching my opponents. These guys, I spent 9 years building 6,000 affordable housing units, working out every single deal. And I'm watching somebody else with an affordable housing plan that looks like it was written by ChatGPT. And that's the nature of what we're going against. And what you have to look at is this. When I was 10 years old, my dad took me to my first city council debate. He was an attorney who did a lot of zoning in the city. And there was a guy in that council, and that guy was like giving a great speech. I said, I like that guy. And my dad said to me, okay, I said, yeah, he's for all these things. He says, it is a lot easier to make promises than make progress. So if you like him, you need to watch what happens, and does he actually produce progress? Now, as a 10-year-old, I wasn't obsessed with Livonia City Council, but I kind of watched. And every big issue, the guy giving the great speech was on the losing side of the vote. He was really good at telling you what he was going to do, but he didn't get anything done. And so what you're going to see from me is this. Everything I said I did in Detroit, I turn on the street lights, I get the violence down, I get the unemployment down, I get the investment back, I rebuild the parks. You don't have to listen to what I said. Look at what I did. I am going into the state of Michigan, and we are going to deal first with our 8-year-olds who are not learning to read. And we are going to bring educators in and write educator-driven curriculum. And we are going to hold principals and superintendents accountable when we put the money back into the system. I'm going to start with the schools. Then second, I'm going after the affordable housing statewide. I understand what you need to have in gap funding, but you're also going to need cooperation from local communities in easing some zoning restrictions. The state of Michigan right now wants to cancel all local zoning, which is insane. You imagine they can build 4 single-family homes in your neighborhood if they pass the bill that's up in Lansing right now. That's their idea of affordable housing. My idea is you create gap funding to fill in the holes, and you make it available to cities who adopt model ordinances. You don't tell cities that they lose their local control. I know how to do this stuff, and will do it quickly. And of course, I will continue to spend my time in Silicon Valley, and I will recruit those tech companies relentlessly and make this the most positive environment anywhere in the Midwest. I can't tell you we can compete with Austin, Texas, but we certainly can compete with Ohio and Indiana. Get the jobs of the future here, keep our kids here. We're going to come out of the gate doing that, and I'm going to stick with it for as long as people want me to be governor.
So at what point do you, I mentioned earlier before about building the coalition, you are confident that you already have people in the chambers that are supporting you, but where does that fit into your first 100 days? I mean, how do you sit down with the Senate majority and minority leader and the House Speaker and the minority leader and say, okay, we're coming from different areas, but we got to work together? I mean,
So,
they don't have a great history of doing that, by the way.
so if you were to go back 12 years, you don't remember Detroit City Council? One of the highest rated TV shows in the city of Detroit was the nightly reruns on cable of that day's city council meeting. People would go home just to watch the fights and the arguments. It was utter chaos. And they said, there's no way this mayor is coming in from the outside and going to get people to work together. In 12 years, we rebuilt this city by working together. That means I brought each of the 9 council members in, said, tell me what your highest priority is. Here's mine. How do we work together? In 12 years, I didn't veto an action of city council. And so I am going to sit down with these folks, and I'm going to say to the Republicans, tell me your priorities. Say to the Democrats, tell me your priorities. But then I'm going to ask the coalition that helped elect me. I've got 20 unions now that have backed me. It just infuriates the Democrats. But the carpenters and the plumbers and the postal workers and the hospitality workers and police officers unions, one after another, they're going to go in and help with the Democrats. So far, I've been endorsed by the Greater Detroit Chamber, the Macomb County Chamber, the Lansing Chamber. I appreciate this chamber doesn't do endorsements, but you guys can still help if you would like. But I'm going to bring the business folks in and say, this is what we're going to do. And so we're going to hammer things out together. And then I'm telling the coalition that elects me, your job isn't over November 3rd. Now you have to help me pass things on a bipartisan basis together. And there's a lot of excitement. And so, Joe, if I can, I tell you, if you guys want to help, MikeDuggan.com, okay? Because my opponents have huge national fundraising bases for Republicans and Democrats. You guys get your texts and your emails about do this. Those are nationally based lists that have been built for years. There's no national independent fundraising list. I'm raising 90% of my money from the state of Michigan. And the only way I win this race is if enough people in Michigan say that Jocelyn Benson's getting most of her money from California. It's not that they want Michigan third graders to read. They want a Democratic governor for the 2028 presidential. Most of John James' money is coming from Texas. They want a Republican governor for the 28 presidential. But if you could do $100, $200, $500, if you go on to MikeDuggan.com, I'm going to need help if you believe what I'm doing, because this isn't going to get done by itself. And that's what we're pitching. And I hope some folks here feel like you can do it. And where's Lori Aurora? Is she here? Lori, stand up, raise your hand.
She's way in the back.
Okay. And if anybody's really committed and would like to hold a fundraiser, you can talk to Lori on your way out. But really, whether I win or not is going to be whether enough people in Michigan rally to offset the national money.
So you're running as an independent. I don't want to speak for you, but largely because you feel the current system is broken and you don't want to be associated with it. But is this for you, is this a one and done for Mike Duggan, or are you hoping that this is going to permanently change the political landscape in the state of Michigan as it relates to politics as usual?
I'll just be as honest with you as I can. I'm 67 years old. As you can probably tell, I got a lot of energy. I got one last career move left in me. If I spend 4 or 8 years at the state of Michigan, and it goes back to the same partisan fighting, I've wasted the last professional years of my life. Everything I do from day one walking in is going to be show people what you can accomplish. But the interesting thing in this last city council race, there were 7 city council incumbents ran. All 7 won in landslides. They learned that the public will respond when you actually deliver results. Mary Sheffield was city council president. You know when the last city council member got elected mayor of Detroit? 1947. After that, if you had anything to do with the city, you had no chance of being elected mayor. All right? Mary Sheffield, as the city council president, got elected with 75% of the vote on the promise of continuing what I was doing. I didn't change things for the short run. I got up every day thinking, how do I change the trajectory of this city for the long run? And I'm going to do the same thing in the state of Michigan. But that means it can't be me. It's going to have to be business and labor and police and community activists. It's going to be partnerships going to Lansing together saying, this is the Michigan strategy that outlasts me. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I would just say this to you. If I don't succeed at this, you are going to be sitting in this room 8 years from now with Republicans and Democrats telling you how evil the other side is. And we're going to be 50th in the country in rating. We just are. That's where we're going.
So I think you have a right to be proud of what you were able to accomplish in the city of Detroit with the support you got in the city council. My last question for you is, looking back on those years, what would you mark as your greatest single accomplishment as mayor of Detroit? And what was your single greatest disappointment, something that you had hoped to be able to accomplish that you were never quite able to do?
The bus system I would have liked to have had farther along, and that got disrupted for a number of reasons, but it's on a good track right now. But, you know, the greatest day, without a doubt, was the day the train station opened. It was my passion from day one. It meant so much to the city. It was going to be demolished, and to see the spectacular way it's been restored. It was on the cover of Time magazine in the bankruptcy headline, and it is now the symbol of Detroit's rebirth. But the biggest thing I did was I changed politics in Detroit. People thought the way you got elected was bashing somebody else. And now what you've seen in Detroit, this is the craziest thing, because the great majority of people think the state is headed the wrong direction. Nationally, people think the country's headed the wrong direction. 75% of Detroiters think the city of Detroit's headed the right direction. Now, did you ever think in your life that you see the poll that people thought Detroit's headed the right direction, and Michigan and the U.S. are going the wrong way? And people in Detroit, if you tried to run on an us versus them campaign in Detroit today, you would get clobbered. Detroiters have completely bought in to a vision of working together and unity. And so I think I have changed politics for the long run. And I think if you ask any of the elected officials in Detroit, they'd say the same thing. The thing that's changed is they never thought they'd see the day they're running for re-election on their positive accomplishments.
We've come to the end of our time. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.